everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of All the Racket podcast, where we talk anything and everything paddle. This is a special episode because, as always, I've got my friend and colleague, Sarah, founder and owner of the Paddle Nomads, and a very special guest, Ben Nichols. I'll let you introduce yourself, Ben.
Oh, well, hi, I'm Anton Sarah. Great to see you. And yeah, I'm Ben Nichols. I'm a sports communications and sports entrepreneur of 20 years, based in the UK, but shortly moving to the East Coast in America. And yeah, I run a company called Paddle 22, which is the world's first paddle communications company. I'm also founder of the Anglo-American Cup, known as the Ryder Cup of Paddle, and I have a membership community called Insider 22 as well. So I'm fully immersed in paddle and emerging racket sports.
That's awesome, Ben. And I had no idea you were actually going to be immigrating to the States. What I mean, that's huge. I mean, especially Reserve Cup is here now. All these paddle clubs, like there's a huge paddle boom in the U.S. that's happening. I mean, with Vegas, we're pretty late in the paddle game a little bit, but
Mm,
now that we're kind of getting into it, I mean, it's our club is like full. It's hard to like find peak times to play now, and so I
yeah,
feel like we're on like I remember I think you said that on your Instagram it said we were in wave one before on the paddle
yeah.
boom, and now we're in wave two, and I'm really feeling that. So I'm pretty excited that someone like you
Yeah,
is going to be here in the States. That's awesome.
definitely. Well, yeah, the wave, it's always relative. Depends where you are in the world, I guess. But I mean, look, US, you could still say wave one, super early days
Mm.
in the States. I see it as a few years behind the UK even. The UK, it's, awareness of paddle is very high right now. But it's, taken a few years to get there. I think, yeah, to answer your question, moving to the States, I've set up Paddle 22, into the sport about 4 years ago. And since that time, I've been very immersed in kind of working with American clubs and brands and businesses. In fact, it's almost become more of my business, the US and the UK. So I've done, a lot with Americans and the American Paddle Network, and saw it as a kind of logical next step to make the move. So my wife was born in the US, and so we've got kind of family over there as well. So it was, kind of a good like meeting of all the kind of the stars aligning, I guess.
That's exciting. Now
Yeah.
the Anglo-American Cup, which we'll talk about later for sure. Now it makes a lot more sense as to how that did so well. I'm just
Yeah.
curious though.
Yeah.
So because I mean, I know you have background in all of the racket sports. Like, did you start in tennis or did you start in squat? What was your start?
Yeah, okay. Where's the entry? So I grew up playing a lot of squash and tennis.
Mm.
And then career-wise, I always wanted to work in sport. I wanted to work on kind of the journalism, communication side of sport, on the storytelling side. And I had a sister that worked in tennis. I got a lot of experience as a student and a teenager, kind of working in the press offices in like Wimbledon, in Queen's Club tennis championships. I worked in Australia at the Australian Open. So I kind of built up a lot of experience on my resume working in tennis in the early days. And then I kind of got one of my first big breaks early in my career working as press officer of the Dubai Tennis Championships, which is ATP WTA back to back, one of the big tournaments. And so I kind of got to know the tennis world quite well, professionally, as well as it being kind of a sport I grew up with. So I've done a few different things in my career, but tennis was one of them. And then I worked in Formula One for a while in anti-doping. And then when kind of paddle sort of reared its head, I guess, and I became familiar with it, and saw the opportunity of this sport really growing massively, I thought, well, this is like almost the perfect, sport for me, squash and tennis combined in a way, and also super exciting as someone with a kind of an entrepreneurial streak to, we grew up with all the other sports, really. We inherited like decades of kind of how they were shaped. But for paddle, it was very much like new, quote unquote. So I think it was, to me, it was the opportunity to really like create, how people see paddle and how people engage with it, and kind of what an opportunity to do that.
I love that. And did it just click for you? Because I mean, since you had the tennis background, I feel like it's a little bit easier for you to kind of pick up on it, right?
Yeah, so look, playing it, I played for the first time, I want to say 2019, 2020 in Dubai. A classic story of my sister lives there, and was had four people, and then someone dropped out, and needed a fourth player, and I came along, familiar with it but not that familiar with it, and instantly really liked it. So I was aware of the sport, fast forward to 2022, when I started working in paddle, there were a few paddle courts around, but not a huge number in England. And then I just spotted a kind of business opportunity with that whole storytelling side as people started to invest, build courts, build clubs, create clothing ranges, racket manufacturers, the whole business sector emerging around paddle. And yes, did it click? Like, I had an interest in it, playing it. I saw a great business opportunity that this was going to be, not just the next big thing, but potentially, transformative compared to any other sport that I've seen in my lifetime. Just because of, all the reasons I'm sure we'll go to talk about paddle's kind of addictiveness. But I just thought this was like an amazing kind of moment in life, my life and life in general, for this sport to come along post pandemic, at a time when we thought we knew everything about sport and then there's this, kind of maverick sort of racket sport game that comes along. So short answer, yes, it felt like a good fit for me. But I also thought, if I want something kind of for my career long term, this isn't going anywhere soon. So isn't going away anywhere soon, I should say, but it is going on the up a lot.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, so for me personally, I started pickleball. So,
Yeah,
I got used to, and I know you have pickleball experience too.
I love
I
pickleball. I love
Yeah,
pickleball.
it's still so fun, especially I prefer singles. But just hitting the ball in pickleball, you have to hit it so much harder. So I remember when I first started paddle, like I just kept donating to the church nearby. It
Yeah,
was a rough transition. Whereas I think for Sarah, it was a little bit easier because she has badminton experience.
yeah,
And so, at our club, she's kind of known as, one of two, the women's champs where, because when they go on tournaments, because of her badminton experience, like she can really whip that ball. And,
yeah.
I think a lot of people that kind of came from, pickleball in our area, they don't know how to deal with that kind of speed. But I am
It's
curious. Yeah.
it's so different. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to
No, you're
interrupt.
good.
It's so different. You're right. Kind of like pickleball and paddle. I think people are sort of comparing them because they've come along at similar-ish times, right? We know the US and other parts of the world have been different in terms of what they've adopted, one rather than the other.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's happening now in both kind, in different ways. In the US, paddle is starting to grow quite rapidly, and then in much of the Asia and the UK and places, pickleball is now starting to get known. So
Mhm.
it is happening just at different times and different paces. But you're absolutely right. Like they are different sports. Make no mistake about it. I love pickleball, but it is, if to go from a paddle court to pickleball straight, swap one for the other within a few minutes, massive differences. Not just the fact you've got walls and cage and glass to contend with in paddle, but just the, like you say, the speed of the ball, what you need to hit. In
Yeah.
pickleball, you do need to give it a good hit for it to travel sometimes. So there's massive differences. Take away the fact it's a racket sport with a ball and a bat.
Yeah.
There's so many differences.
Yeah. So like for me, because I come from badminton, my whole life
Mm,
grew up in Asia. I played badminton. So the click moment was my first day of paddle. I was like, okay, let me try this. I saw the ad on Instagram and I got bored because it was like just the world was just slowly opening up from COVID lockdown. So got there one day. I was like, okay, my first day at paddle, because of my badminton background, I'm already feeling comfortable doing overhead smashes or overhead hits.
mm,
And then with badminton, we flick the wrist more. So my
yeah.
first day, I was already doing portres, and I screamed like, ah! I was like saying sorry, apologizing to the coach all the time. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And he was like, wait, let me explain the game. And then that's when it clicked, like, oh my God, the point doesn't end, and then he explained the game better, and then that's when I was like, oh, the game just keeps opening up, and that's when it clicked to me, like, I love this.
Yeah, I mean, I love that about paddle. It's sort of like a metaphor for life, of getting a second chance at something, right? The ball passes you, and I mean, your natural instinct for most people is that's over, but it comes back, and you sort of forget you get a second bite
Yeah,
of the cherry.
I remember the coach because I was doing 3 portraits on my first day of paddle. I didn't know what I was doing. And then the coach was telling me, if you keep doing that, you're going to be amazing in paddle. I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's. I mean, and not enough gets said about, maybe because tennis is such a bigger game and much more global and many more players than squash, internationally and more higher profile. But not enough gets said about the squash transition to paddle, in my
Mm.
view. Squash is, something like the UK, it's actually been in decline. I think it's an amazing sport, great heritage, and actually it's going to be in the Olympics, of course. So who knows what that does for its future? But but arguably, squash players have a more of an advantage going into the paddle court than tennis in some ways. I think with the walls and so forth, I've seen tennis players be great maybe at the net with paddle, but they do not like the wall thing.
Yeah.
Whereas squash players, again, might not be so comfortable at the net, generalizing here. But when it comes off the wall, they kind of, their brain kicks in quicker. So there's a, if you're going to pick one, I'd say being a squash player is maybe more of an advantage than being a tennis player. But it depends.
I played with this guy. He's from, I think he was from UK. He visited Vegas one time, and then so I got the chance to play with him. And I asked, "Oh, what's your racket sport?" And he said squash, and he dominated the paddle right away. The rhythm of the blast, I was like, amazing. The shot so low and short and low and sharp. I was like, wow, deep. I was like, wow.
Yeah,
on that.
We have there's a very well-known player at our club. He started in squash. He won't be the one that kills the point, but he because of his squash experience, you can never get anything past him. He just keeps banging off the wall or just using the wall to advantage. So it's like at some point you just make the mistake yourself. It's a very interesting change from facing people that you could see have that tennis background versus that squash experience. Like, I don't know how to play against him. I genuinely, like, I haven't beaten him ever. And, to me, I think I've beaten players that are maybe a little bit better than him, but for whatever reason, I don't understand how to play against him. So it is interesting kind of like to kind of look at all these racket sports. Like, they're all similar in their own way, but there's different enough that if you come from one, you're not going to play paddle the same way when you first start. But I'm really curious to kind of hear you guys' take on this, because you guys have both been in this world for a long time. Like, is there a specific niche or like a specific kind of like is paddle taking over people that play tennis? Is paddle kind of taking players from pickleball? Like, is it more taking from like people who are looking for a new networking sport instead of golf? Where are we kind of taking these players from? Like, is it just people that are looking for a third place? What do you guys think about that?
Sarah, you want to go first on me? I have some views. I'll be interested to see. Okay. In the UK, let's give an example where it's slightly more advanced than the US. A lot of people, and a lot gets said of people coming from tennis to paddle. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's people maybe in their 40s, 50s, 60s, kind of middle age, who are, have played tennis for years, and this idea of a fresh sport coming along and something new in their life when everything feels quite like predictable and kind of been doing the same thing for years. This idea of something novel. Wow, I can get my teeth into something which I can pick up and not feel like I'm doing it from scratch. Like, I know how to connect with the ball. So definitely a lot of tennis players coming in. I would say at the same time, and where paddle is trying to position itself is not, and it's different in the US. I see it slightly differently, but in the UK, it's trying not to position itself as too traditional, too much like tennis, golf, too elitist, too expensive. There is a price point, but it's trying to position itself as more kind of egalitarian, more urban, more modern, fun, loud music, kind of more just modern and kind of inclusive, I guess. So that's how it's trying to position itself, because it feels it can pick up a bigger audience than tennis and golf have tried for years to, like, again, broaden their reach, but there is a barrier. People think there's maybe the membership thing or the etiquette, which to some people is a nice thing, but a lot of people get put off by this. So I think paddle is trying to position itself as, one, you can pick it up a lot easier than tennis or golf or squash or more technical sports. And also, if we make this feel and look more young and friendly and for anyone with no strict dress code, etc., we're going to get more people from more walks of life coming through the doors. So if paddle plays it right and brings those two things along with it, it can have a big audience. So to come back to your question, on paper, those kind of people who've been put off by tennis and golf and those traditional sports we are seeing people with no racket sports background come into paddle, probably because it looks more welcoming. So that's a little bit of what's happening in the UK, and then there's the squash contingent as well, for sure. Now in the US, I think it's again, super early days, but in some parts for sure it's made it a really expensive, very elite sport very kind of country club, etc., which again, in one sense, is really nice and really aspirational, and we love to be in those places. In the other sense, how do you build the sport that way? I think it will over time evolve into there'll be something for everyone with paddle and many more different types of facilities, different price points. To come to the like demographic of people playing paddle in the US, yeah, I'd say it is a wealthy, high net worth crowd in a lot of the parts of the Northeast, for example, in Miami, because the price point is expensive. So that's a little prohibitive. And I would say, yes, it is people that play tennis. But I think also to your point, there's a big, and this is valid for the UK, US, and other emerging countries, there's a big corporate crowd that are taken to the paddle court because I think, you know, golf has been the default sport of doing business and having a nice time, but it's long. I think we lost Sarah. I hope she's come back. I wasn't speaking too long.
No.
But,
there we go.
Sorry, Sarah. I hope I wasn't speaking too long.
I'm back.
I'm coming to the end of my answer.
Sorry, I lost all of you guys. It's kind of windy in Vegas right now. It's like, what's the wind? Yeah, very windy here.
Yeah.
So,
but look, yeah, I was just saying golf for sure. Like it's picking up a lot of golf people, a lot of corporate people that use golf as like a corporate social glue. And you know, I always say, who has time for golf these days? It's a great sport, but 18 holes takes forever. It's long. Again, you have that traditional kind of side. Paddle's quick. You can have a drink afterwards. It lends itself to social interaction, particularly as you've got 4 players, close proximity. You're all gonna interact in some way, whether you like it or not, because everyone has a shot and there's kind of laughter and dynamism with the sport. So for sure, the corporate crowd is I think where paddle can really win in the future.
I actually agree with you on that, Ben, because like, you know, as far as like networking goes, like I've done business with people at paddle because it's like, you know, we played 90 minutes. In between those, you get breaks. Obviously, you get your water break. It's like, oh, what do you do? Like, what do you do for fun? And because of like how paddle clubs, you know, it is kind of like a country club kind of thing. It's so easy to kind of conduct business or kind of see what people do, especially in the creative industry or really any industry, versus in golf. You're there for what? Like even 9 holes takes what, 2 to 3 hours, and that's if you can hit a damn ball. In my case, I can't do it.
I'm usually in the water or the bunk door.
Yeah, exactly, right. And then it's like you think about it too, on top of the time aspect of trying to learn how to even play golf, and then also the time aspect of, you know, going through all those holes, you know, there's also like, I mean, what is it, like $100, $200? I mean, I'm talking in the US, I guess, where it's way more expensive for us in the paddle. You know, I mean, our club's pretty great rates, so we can play, you know, $30 for, you know, 90 minutes. And then after that, you can just sit around and talk to people if you want to. So I'm kind of going to go out on a limb and say, I feel like paddle could be the next great networking sport. I think it can take over that niche of golf.
100%. I've had a business I've co-founded called Property and Paddle the last couple of years, and it is cool. And we did it with myself and a guy called Rohit Grul, who's a surveyor, property guy by trade, who got into paddle. And we did it because we were like, wow, there is a big scene here of corporates wanting to go and play paddle, and they want to network in a way that's not, you know, the kind of stiff drinks party thing with the name badges always. Some people don't like that. And we want to play paddle, get off the court. And then naturally the glue, you know, the kind of, it's been the path has been laid to like do business and chat in a way, because we just got on court and kind of lowered our barrier of like formality.
Yeah.
So paddle's perfect for that, and instantly people relax and then they're happy to chat. There's no kind of this awkward social kind of getting to know each other first. You're straight on the court, you're sweating together, you're banging into the walls.
Yeah.
So I think it's perfect for that.
You're not watching some guy awkwardly like set up his shot and then it's like the worst form you've ever seen, right? That's
exactly that. Yeah, that'd be me too.
Yeah. What about Sarah? Because I know so Sarah's been all over the world at this point too, just kind of training in paddle and all that kind of stuff. Like you said, you've seen a lot of people in squash. You've seen a lot of people. Like, is there a specific niche that you're kind of seeing trending where it's like we're kind of stealing players from this spot, or is it just kind of all over, kind of like what Ben was saying too?
Yeah, I think I agree with Ben, although I lost my network for a little bit. But overall, I think because of the dynamics of the game, you can't start a game without 4 people. You have to
Yeah.
have a fourth person. And now, so there's the personally, when I get asked to join a game or when I form a game, um, it forces me to show up. And on the days that it's not like a gym, it's not like a tip, you know, like, hey, I can't, like, I get motivated to show up every time because there's three other people like
Mhm.
relying on my presence to get a game to make the game happen. And so I think that that's a very social part of padel as well because it's always played in doubles. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I think yeah, overall I agree with Ben too.
Is that, but so, because you guys both kind of talked about that whole, like, you're in that cage together. You know, you're banging on the
Mhm.
wall, you're sweating together, all that kind of stuff. Like, do we think that's why it's so easy to replace padel with all of our other previous activities? Like in my case, it was pickleball. In some people's cases, it's the gym, right? Like, is that what it is? Is it the accessibility? Like, why do we think, like, if we're trying to explain this to people why it's addicting, it's hard to be like, well, it's just fun to try it. Like, how do you guys describe like that addictive factor? Like, is there something you guys can pinpoint? Because honestly, it'd be great because I'm trying to get people more into it. You know?
For me personally, I think it's the fact that the game opens, there's a lot of opportunities to keep the ball in play. It's the ball doesn't die. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't waste your time picking up for me the shuttlecock or the pickleball ball. Like, hey. So it's like the game there's a dopamine hit each time the balls just continue. Like, wow. For me, that's for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's very easy to pick up as a sport, in many ways like pickleball, but they're both, relatively easy, low barriers, I'd say. It's easy to pick up, and if you pick something up quickly, by and large, enjoyment is there. If you have
Yeah.
enjoyment, you come back, repeat purchase. So quite simple, a simple passage really, for why people get really into it. And yeah, drilling down, Sarah's absolutely right. Like, in a point compared to a squash point, tennis, I'm sure badminton and other sports, most players are hitting the ball at some point. Most players are involved in a point of some, in some form. And it's humorous in many ways. There's people kind of going forwards and back, and there's a lot going on in a point, right? It's not
Yeah.
sort of too structured that way. So, or the professional side is much more structured, but your average game, there's all sorts going on. So, I just think it's kind of interactive in that way,
Mhm.
and I think yeah, it's something to keep you entertained and keep you kind of stimulated because the points are longer and there's a lot going on.
And it's funny because I always describe paddle as it is harder than pickleball generally. You know, I think that's a pretty easy argument to make, but I would argue that once you get past that beginner stage, once you get to more like that intermediate stage, an intermediate a rally with four intermediate players in paddle is easier to like. It's easier for you to get that rally going versus if you get to that intermediate rally in pickleball. Like it's so there's I think there's a slightly lower margin of error for pickleball than it is for paddle. Do you guys agree with that?
Sarah, you go first.
So my thought processing is still processing.
Lower margin for error, you're saying in
Pickleball, that's why.
In pickleball, just because in paddle, right? If the ball goes past you, you do have that second chance. You can either try to hit it off the wall, or you
yeah,
can try and scoop that thing up. Versus in pickleball, because there are no walls, like
yeah,
and honestly too, wind variables, right? Like especially if you're outdoors. Again, overall, paddle's much more technical, much harder to play. But just as far as like again, intermediate level where you're not so much in control of the ball yet where you can kill it when there's an opportunity. But I think it's easier for probably 60-70% of the population to keep a rally going in paddle.
yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think in paddle, yeah, it's not as obvious the ball is dead until it's
Yeah.
really dead. Like you say, is it absolutely? I'm sure we've all had points where we sort of think it's dead, but then your partner is still miraculously there and scooping it up off the wall. So yeah, in pickleball, once it's past you pretty much.
Yeah. I think personally that's where it is for me. Because like in pickleball, I never took it that seriously because honestly, at some point I got bored of it. Like you're just kind of
Hmm.
in the kitchen. And I think it's still a very fun social game. But when it
Yeah.
comes to like that addictive factor of like, I want to learn a vibra, I want to learn a bandeja, like I never went that far with pickleball. Whereas there's so many shots in paddle, so many different things you can do. I think it's just the creative aspect of it, like
Yeah.
all the different angles that you can take.
And
Agree.
it's so weird for me. Just me personally, the more I learned paddle, the more I understand the game dynamics. As soon as I like my level, I leveled up. I thought that when I become an intermediate or experienced advanced intermediate, I thought the game would be faster. But then that's when I was like, why is my game slower now, but longer rallies, more
Mhm.
intentional? And then it's about waiting for the right ball. So when I was a beginner, I was like, I can't wait to level up because I want my game faster. Da, da, da. But then it becomes slower, but more intentional. Like, hey,
Yeah.
waiting for the right ball.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
gotta
Agree.
And I gotta bring some, it's funny. I gotta bring something up that you brought up earlier, Ben. It was pretty funny because you're saying, like with paddle, like if we play it right, like the no dress code thing, all that kind of stuff. But it's funny because in our club, I think you can start to see the deeper everybody goes or the better the people get at paddle. Man, there's a correlation between the paddle fit that they have versus when they first started. You
Oh, I'm
know,
sure. I'm
it's
sure. I'm sure.
it's so funny because like even for me, like 2 weeks later I have all Adidas stuff, and then like even like my out, like my going out clothes, like I have like more Adidas shoes and stuff like that. And I started showing up in more matchy gear. There's actually one player at the club. It's so funny. We always joke about it because I think the higher intensity the game is, the more stressed out he is about it, the higher his shorts go. So there's just like these little things about like
Little
paddle where
things
it's
you
just like
notice.
little things you know, but it's like I think with paddle it's just so easy for it to become more of a lifestyle rather than just a hobby
Yeah.
because it does combine the best aspects of, like, for example, with golf, like you were saying, like the networking aspect, like pickleball, like all the racket sports, like we have walls, we basically play with a tennis ball. And so
Yeah.
that's why it's like really interesting to me to kind of like be in this sort of space and paddle where it's like we're in the middle of the paddle boom, and I'm just
Yeah.
so excited to see where it takes us. Um,
Yeah.
but kind of going back to like the whole, because I think before I was kind of focusing on the U.S., but I kind of want to talk about the Anglo-American Cup, like the Ryder
Mm.
Cup of paddle. So how did how did you start that? What was the origin? What was your vision behind it? Like, why does a friendly rivalry between the U.S. and
Why?
UK matter for us?
For sure. I'm deeply passionate about it. I'm a Brit, as you can hear and as
Of
you know.
course.
But I've always been a big fan of American culture, and some call it an Americanophile. It's not a very easy word to say, but kind of a fan of American culture and lifestyle.
Hmm.
And my sisters were at college in the US in the 90s, and I ever since then I kind of did a first trip there. I fell in love with the States, so I've always had an interest in the US. I've done I worked kind of with clients over there, and how it came about was I got to know Bill Ullman, who's president of the USPA, and we were having a conversation. This is summer. Where are we now? 2026, summer 2023, I want to say.
Wow.
Might have been 2024, but we were at a paddle event, actually, as it happens. We are in the Hamptons, which was a nice place to be, having a drink
Of course.
and watching paddle. And Bill said to me, "Look, you're a Brit that clearly likes the US and spending time here. I'm an American that used to live in England. There's a great heritage, obviously, in sports events between our countries, as we know. The Ryder Cup, Davis Cup, America's Cup, all started as Britain against America. And the slight irony here is Britain and America, two very new countries with paddle. Why don't we recreate this rivalry, but for this sport?"
Mhm.
And it took me about 5 seconds to be like, this is a perfect fit for me because I love both countries. The timing is now because both countries are super early days. Like I say, UK maybe a couple of years ahead if you want to get precise about it, but very early stages together. And I'm a big, I love storytelling. My whole career is built on PR and promotion and telling stories and kind of grabbing, really kind of compelling stories, I suppose. And I just thought this is a perfect story in my view. For those familiar with this rivalry, what a great way of kind of giving it new life. So we said, yes, let's do this. And then, of course, from vision to reality is a whole different ballgame. So it was a case of we brought on a third co-founder called Joelle Quinn, who's got a commercial background. She's also a New Yorker like Bill.
Mhm.
And we said, right, let's bring this to reality. So the first event was in London in October last year. We brought together 32 Brits, 32 Americans, across open age groups, so the young, talented players, and then ages, so 40s, 50s, and 60s, men and women. And it was, beyond our expectations. We had a great vision with this, but to execute it, it was kind of it's the UK's biggest, most significant paddle tournament there's been.
Yeah.
We had about 9 million audience, media audience. It was on BBC, ITV, mainstream radios and newspapers. We really kind of brought it to town in a big way. And it's the best kind of, from an organizer's point of view, the best ending. It went to the 47th of 48 matches before the Americans won.
Ooh.
So it was like, it was kind of Ryder Cup-esque in terms of this team tribal element, it was patriotism, but friendly. It was a celebration of the UK and US sporting landscapes. It was people, I kid you not, who obviously met at the beginning of day one, and by the end, they were friends saying, we'll come and visit your club, you come visit mine. And that's what this was all about. It was about elite paddle, but it was, more importantly, about people making friendships and a sort of transatlantic rivalry and, relationship between the two countries on the sports field. So we delivered that in London, and we realized, we had Playtomic and Babolat as our title partners, which was great.
Wow.
Really kind of indebted to their support for year one. And we realized we were really onto something special, and, created a really, unique team event. So the next step is US, and then we go every year, kind of US, UK, US, UK. So year two is, we just announced for South Florida, the Replay Club, which is a great place if ever you're in that part of the US. And we decided to expand it. We were ambitious of what we want to do. So we've gone from 64 players to 104.
Wow.
And what that means is we had two pairs in each category before. We've now got a third pair in each category. So if you're in the women's 40s, you've got first pair, second pair, and third pair in America playing the British first, second, and third.
Yeah.
And then there's a mixed doubles as well. So each player plays four matches over 2.5 days. But then we've added a university component as well. So we've got college players playing from both countries as well. And February the 4th to 6th next year. And then each year we're doing it in February. That's kind of going to be our slot in the calendar. So yeah, we're really excited about it. And it is, Labour Cup, Ryder Cup, call it what you like. That's what we've created for paddle, and we want to grow it into one of the best paddle tournaments worldwide.
Wow.
That's a lot. That's huge. I mean,
that's the ambition. We've had 1 year. Look, we've got a lot of work to do, but we're really pleased with year one. And it gave us kind of, validation that this is something to really build. So we're very excited about its future.
I mean, so how does one, for example, like how do you qualify then to be part of that tournament then?
Sure. So first year was absolutely that we said, look, this is a private event. You can't just come in with an idea and be like, we want to be sanctioned. We want to be, on the FIP tour. You have to earn that right. So we were like, year one, we had the support of the US Padel Association. We had support of the LTA, the governing body for tennis and paddle in the UK, through officials. So they officiated the event, refereed it. And then year two, we've got USPA backing it as well. So qualification is, in the UK, we've got a player selection committee, team of 4 people. I'm one of the people on it. We've got someone called Sam Kemp, who former LTA, great background in paddle development and player representation. And then we've got 2 players who played in the original event, Ellie Tate and Cam Dollymore. They're 2 of the captains. And it's a selection of criteria, and that can be based on whether you played in year one, that can be placed in your ranking, rating. That can be placed on, availability, enthusiasm for the competition, a whole range of criteria. We're obviously trying to get the best players we can, but also people with the right fit, people that really embody that team aspect. And that's what made this really work in year one. Yes, we had great paddle players, but we had great people. And that's, to be honest, it's easy to say, but that's what made it stand out. We had people that were really just delighted to be playing their own part in history. And, loving kind of representing their country and loving meeting people from the opposing country. And that was just the best thing you see about team sport. So To come back to your question, yeah, so that on the UK side, we have a selection committee and criteria. The US side, again, is going to be a similar kind of involvement with the USPA. And yeah, it's essentially we're trying to identify over a series of months who are the right people for the team, and then we'll have 52 on both sides.
Wow.
So I'm sure we can, you'll know the USPA, Sarah, well, but speak to Bill and throw your hat in the ring. And we want the more people there to show their interest, the better.
Sounds amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Sarah's won enough tournaments in the US that I think you'd make a great set for that tournament, Sarah.
Yeah, through the Padel Nomads as well, I actually got an invitation from a lady that's based, I think they own the club, and her husband is a coach in that club as well. They're based in South Africa. She just actually sent me an invitation for an international ladies tournament. I was like, hey,
Wow.
so we're
You've got to
drafting.
do it.
Yeah.
But that's the fun thing about this sport for me. Yes, I'm working in it, and there's all of that, but it's the friendships you make and this kind of unique journey of paddle is kind of bringing people together as this connector, isn't it? We're meeting. I mean, we've met through this, but if it wasn't for paddle, what we've done. So it's very much it's this common denominator where people are just kind of through their professional and personal lives, connecting with people they otherwise wouldn't have done. And I think that's a great story itself.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a part of Sarah's built teams too within our club where, I'll get invited to do tournaments and it's like, look, I'm just a self-proclaimed best 2.0 player in Vegas. But, it's like, in some ways it's like, it's not a self-deprecation, but it's like, there are some tournaments I don't think I have business in that. But because of the fact that the importance is just like the team play, the friendships that we make along the way and stuff like that, which, I think we as a club, we as a, as a group, we value that so much more than just well, let's get this guy in. He's pretty good, but he's a little bit off-putting at times, right? Or he's a little bit too into it, And so, I think that what you guys are doing with the, with the Anglo-American Cup is really fantastic. And I mean, I think it's something that hopefully people here would strive to be a part of it. I hope
100%. Yeah. I mean, word out to you guys, to anyone that's listening, just please throw your hat in the ring. We want to get as many people interested in this as possible. And it's a celebration of the sport in both countries. So we really hope as many people come and play and come and watch and come and be part of it and see what it's about. It's definitely, I've been to a lot of paddle tournaments and obviously I'm part of this. I would say this, but it is unique. It is different. It has a different feel. And it's fun. Look, year one, we played and we're like, what do we have at our disposal? We're year one, we've got some sponsorship money now. We've got a budget. We've got a venue. We've got players that are into this. But, we can't profess to come in and be a sanctioned event year one. It just doesn't happen. We've got to earn that right. But what we do have is a great, creative story. So we played on the fact of, we had a, British music hour against American music hour. We had kind of an English tea for one of the afternoons. We had, the flags draped everywhere. We had kind of great content that was playing on, American movies and music against British ones. So it was, played on the cultural aspect to make it fun. And people really bought into that, because they thought, yes, it's about the paddle, but actually this is, it's about something a bit deeper. So that was a lot of fun, and that's kind of what we brought to the table.
That's awesome to hear. I'm curious though, because we always talk about these transatlantic relationships and stuff like that, and paddle just booming kind of all over the world. A lot of paddle clubs are starting to become destinations for a lot of people, right? And it's for both of you guys who have been in so many clubs, you guys have kind of experienced that where it's the bar, right? The music, kind of what you guys are saying, and the lounge, it's just as vital as the courts are at this point. But kind of what you were talking about earlier, Ben, because I'm curious to hear you guys' take on this. With paddle growing in the US and kind of that sort of it is kind of seen as elitist, right? But because of how a lot of paddle clubs have kind of positioned themselves, do you think it's more important for paddle clubs to be seen as these big destination spot with all these amenities, with all these offerings, or do you think it's more important right now for the growth of paddle in the US to sort of cater to, more of like a lower, I guess, financial ceiling, to say the least?
I wish it was an easy answer, but look, I think it's a fashionable answer to be like, oh, we want public courts, we want no barrier to entry, we want it to be for everyone,
Yeah.
for sure. Don't get me wrong, we do,
Mhm.
but the journey to get there might be different. So, as much as we might, in some ways, not like the fact it's elitist and there's a high price point and it's inaccessible. Think about human nature. We aspire to the next back level up, right?
Yes.
Why do we kind of like idolize celebrities? Because they're not us, but we think we might want to relate to them, or the best version of ourselves could become something like them. So we always want something slightly out of reach. So you think about kind of the top modern country clubs that are doing paddle. That's good for the sport in my view, because it is, it makes it aspirational. It makes you strive for something more. It makes you strive to be successful because you can get it. So I wouldn't want paddle to be like that everywhere, but I do think there's a place for that. Just like I think there's a place for your public park courts,
Yeah.
because you want everyone to have an opportunity. It's not one or the other, and there's definitely a whole lot of stuff in between. So again, some people don't want that stuff at the high end because they think, oh, that means there's a barrier. Well, there's a barrier to some, but as long as you've got the opportunity in other places to play, where there's not such a big cost prohibitor, it's not a problem. I think everyone has their like opportunity, and everyone will constantly strive to get to the next best court, the next best club, and that's just human nature. So I think that is the reality in a free market, free market economics. There will be something of every level. That's just kind of the way of the world. There's no way around that. And I do think as the sport settles, eventually you'll get your public park courts.
Yeah.
What's my preference to your point? I think you do. So I'm going to come back to the UK because it's a few years ahead. So you do have a high price point in somewhere like London, where indoors in Canary Wharf in the financial hub, it's a really expensive place to play Padium, for example, but it's a really luxurious place to play, and it's a wealthy area with bankers and financial people, so they can do that, and they will do that, and they've found their market. The other end of the spectrum, in the northwest of England, there's a club operator called Soul Paddle. Big, I admire what they've done, and they purposely come in and say, we want this to be seen as an every person sport. We want our demographic to be lower socioeconomic, if we're honest. We don't want this to be a posh sport. And they've absolutely got their market right there, because that's they're meeting people where they are. So, and then there's a load of stuff in the middle, where it is still a little bit pricey, but people, the kind of middle classes, I guess.
Yeah.
So generalizing there is something for everyone, and I think in the US over time you will see something for everyone. But I do think whilst it can be accessible, and whilst it can be, you don't want the kind of traditional elitism of the sport to be widespread. I think you do want this kind of like, if you can, your cold plungers and your saunas and these kind of cool modern things, because the modern consumer, the modern professional craves that kind of thing, right? If I think about like what I go to a co-working space for my work. I go to a gym because I kind of have to. I go to my kind of tennis club because it has paddle courts. If I could bring that all under one roof, I wouldn't have to pay 3 memberships. And that's kind of like, I'm a straw poll of one here, but I think there's a lot of people like me who do want these things in their life, and if they could do it in one place, that's the perfect club to have. So I think it's a long answer to your question, but I think that kind of indoor modern country club, if you like, that has multiple facilities as well as paddle, is definitely the landing point for the sport. And I think a lot of people would want that kind of facility when they think about what they would build.
I agree. Sarah, what do you think about that? Sarah and I've had this debate before, so I kind of want to hear her.
Yeah, I agree. Everything Ben said, amazing. But there's something I've traveled to Spain. I was there 3 weeks ago, stayed there for 2 weeks. So I'm pretty familiar with the public and private courts. So for me, I tend to evaluate my experience through vibes, energy. So what I noticed playing in a public court in Spain, it's cheap, by the way. Like
really cheap.
I paid was €3, so that's around
crazy.
$5. Yeah. And so the most expensive that I paid was €11 for public courts.
Mm.
But what I noticed, because it's public, there's a lot of in and out. People just go in and out fast.
Mm.
Like for me, I may be wrong, but what I observed being there for 2 weeks was that with public courts, people after the game, they just leave. Like because there's no bar, there's no
Yeah.
sauna, there's no cold plunge, there's no there's a changing room, but there's no shower, all the
Mm.
amenities that a private club would have. And so just leave, hi, leave. There's still a very huge social aspect, but
Mhm.
also I've been to a lot of private, luxurious clubs. People tend to stay for these stuff, the
Yeah.
bar.
Yeah,
So
they
there's
do.
more social. There's a different aspect of belongingness in the society as well if you're in a private club, because
100%.
there's bar, there's a cafe. Oh, and then you just get to live there. I mean,
Yeah.
you just yeah, and
Yeah.
so there's a different social aspect. Good and but not bad. I'm not saying public court or public setting is bad, but it's a very different social dynamics too between the public and private.
I
But for me, private, I feel like I could embrace the people more because we get to stay more, get to relax more. There's yeah, there's that.
100%. 100%. I totally agree with all of that. And I'd love us to get to a stage where we have those public courts like they do in Spain, because that means then we can have so many players and the standard could get so good because there's no excuse, like football. You piece of grass and you make up a goal, right?
Yeah.
That's why football in somewhere like the UK that has been such a big thing, is that there is no financial barrier. You just need grass and put down your 2 items of clothing and you've got goalposts. So I think with paddle, if there are those courts out there, then we can get the masses playing. But you're right, the sense of belonging and community, like people do want that, and big numbers of people want that. And we had it, we've had it with like squash clubs, and we've had it with tennis clubs for years, and golf clubs, and it doesn't need to feel like that, but it does need to have certain similarities, ways of keeping people there beyond the game of paddle, which is the bar, which is the cafe, which is, like you say, getting out, probably these days, getting out their laptop and doing a bit of working or a Zoom, or it is, at the nicer end, saunas and cold plunges and all these modern amenities. I think it's absolutely fits with paddle so well.
Yeah, and I've been to those private clubs where they also have their own Pilates studio, their own gym, their own they also have a recovery area where they have those compressor boots. It's free for all the members. Amazing. So
yeah, exactly.
No, I went to Conquer Paddle in Arizona, and it was kind of like the first time where I went to a more upscale club because, I think in Vegas, we are spoiled by our club because our rates are fantastic. Like it's pretty cheap but it still has all the amenities you mostly need. But Conquer is kind of one of those where it's like it is a little bit more like upscale. They have the cold plunge, the sauna, the compressor boots. Which, by the way, after the tournament, I was there for like 2 hours, just using the compressor boots. I was like, "Yo, this is awesome." But
I was going to say not in the cold plunge. That's dangerous, right?
No, not in the cold plunge. No. Yeah, I wouldn't be here if I was. But it was crazy. They had a guy that like gave you a massage there. I'm like, are you serious? Like if like for me, like those kind of amenities, I would absolutely pay.
Conquer do a
Extra.
great job. I mean, I can't wait to visit that club, and they've got another one opening. Enrique and the team are doing a brilliant job. They've got another one opening in Utah, Lehigh, Utah, Silicon Slopes, which is a new, obviously very up and coming kind of business district as well. So they're doing a great job. But it's venues like that. I think people are starting to associate paddle with that, and why not?
Yeah. Like this one club in Bali Padel Academy, they actually have an infinity pool facing the rice fields.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I was in Bali. I went to Australia at Christmas time and with my family, and we came back by Bali and went to. I went into a jungle paddle, but I spent most time at Indo Paddle because I know the owner there. Just great club, and he's got a thriving community there. I went a few times, so I got a sight of it at peak off peak, and just created an amazing
community. I've been to Jungle Padel as well. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's a good place.
Yeah.
Right.
But I do like where we landed because it's like, like I agree with you guys. I think that it is important to have those upscale clubs like Conquer, like all these clubs that we mentioned, because like a lot of people are going to want to stay there for those amenities, for the bar, for the cold plunges.
Mhm.
I also do think that it's of course really important, and I swear I'm not a plug, but it's really important, of course, to have the P1 kind of clubs, the Tactica paddle kind of clubs.
Yeah,
I think Paddle Up, things like that, where it's like it's more accessible to the public. But I
yeah,
think that because of that barrier to entry, in a lot of ways, it actually ensures that most of the people who go there are generally like going to be, not to sound elitist, maybe I do, but worth more playing with, because they're not going to want to just leave. They're not going to like they're going to offer something of value to you, whether that's a connection or just like a genuine friendship or whatever
yeah.
the case may be. Because if people are paying for this thing, then they tend to value that thing much, much more than just like, I'm just going to pull up to the club and just be
It's
there.
it's so true. It's so true, and I think it's very it's fashionable, isn't it, to say you don't want any barriers, right? Like that, people are
Yeah.
like, I think that's the right thing to say. But make no mistake, there are barriers there that strive people. We talked about it, that strive people to like, I really want to be more successful because I want to get into that club and be able to afford it, or I
Yeah.
really want to, improve my game to get into that tournament. You constantly want the next. Not everyone, but a lot of people constantly want the next barrier to surpass and prove to themselves they can do something. And it's the FOMO thing. If you can't quite get in, you're going to get in next time. Because so as much as that creates a bit of friction, it creates the best out of people, because you want to get better, or you want to get more successful, or you want to, whatever it is, you don't stand still. And yeah, from a business point of view, if you're a club, like, you're well within your rights to do that, right? Because there's a price point for everyone. And you want, you're thinking about who the type of person that's going to come in your club. So it's a business at the end of the day, and they've got to make tough decisions. And also you've got the challenge. The sport is very unknown still at this stage.
Yeah.
How many very small percentage of Americans that know paddle yet. That will change, but I think you've got that to contend with. So there are going to be price points where they need to be really, I guess, stubborn in what
Yeah.
they decide, because you've got to make it work, and that doesn't mean it can be a really low price right now. But again, this will all change. The conversation we're having now, I think, is very different in 2-3 years.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah,
And I want to pick your brain a little bit,
great
Ben.
brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that 2 to 3 years down conversation, like, Vegas is known as like the hospitality capital of the world, right? Like, but how do you think like we can make our impact in the paddle world? Like, is there like a special place? Because I mean, right now, obviously, when you think about paddle in America, you think Florida, right?
You do. You
Yeah.
do.
So I
Yeah.
mean,
You do.
yeah. So, but
Yeah.
what about Vegas? Like, where do you think like our places in the paddle world? Is there like a specific
Well,
place for us, or you know?
there sure is. Like, so I'm to be more specific, I was a little bit cryptic. I'm moving to the States, moving to the East Coast, moving to Charleston in South Carolina this summer.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to be close to Vegas, but I've got a lot of trips I need to do, and Vegas is one of the places I haven't been. I'm aware of P1 and some people down there, so I need an excuse to come along.
Yeah.
So look, I'll come and see it for myself, is the first point I want to make. But what place does Vegas have? I imagine a big place, like, capital of entertainment, and a larger than life place in many ways. It's like it needs to have paddle, and it needs to have kind of celebrities playing paddle. It needs to have paddle under the lights. It needs to be very Vegas with how it does paddle, in my view. Again,
Yeah.
this is someone not on the ground. I'm playing on the cliches here, but it needs to, with the Formula One race, which I understand has become successful, big crossover with F1 drivers loving paddle. It needs to be showcasing paddle during that week, engaging the teams in that way. It needs to, I guess, put itself on the map in the most Vegas way possible, in the most showbiz type
Yeah.
way. At the ground level, simple, like any place, needs to build clubs. It needs to build, local kind of audiences for paddle by, clubs will need to probably, have free clinics. They'll need to go out to the businesses and offer, like, time limited, corporate league opportunities. So there needs to be a bit of like lost leadership in terms of their business economics in the early days, just to get people through the door, I guess, and get awareness up. But that's not specific to Vegas. That's anywhere. I'd say you just
Yeah.
need to do things outside the box to get that critical mass of people through your doors. And then, once they're kind of on the paddle drug, I suppose that's when you could be a bit kind of like, up those prices if you need to, or kind of, I guess kind of rethink the strategy. But I definitely think, at the club level, any city needs to be really pushing itself out to get the people through the door. Because I see this, I've done some work for Salt Lake City Paddle Club.
Yeah.
Working with the owner there, it was like, we've got to, I speak to the Uber driver, I speak to the people in the supermarket, I speak to everyone and try and explain what paddle is. They don't know what paddle is yet. So we've got that challenge of just like preaching paddle to as many people as possible. But yeah, Vegas, I think just needs to absolutely see how it can activate paddle. How can it, I guess, engage kind of, the events and the showbiz side of Vegas, and and get paddle known that way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, honestly, and you were talking about the F1 inclusion in there, and honestly, the whole time I was at the paddock last year, I was like, there's enough room up here to put a paddle court. Why don't we do that? They had an ice rink up there last year, and I'm just like, I think we're kind of wasting a huge opportunity here. So,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Ben. If you still have connections with F1, you got to make that suggestion.
I'm up for it. It does happen. I think in the British Grand Prix, I think they did a paddle court. I think maybe in Abu Dhabi they did one.
Yeah,
because they're like, okay, well, number one, we know the drivers and the teams, they all love paddles. Become this new like sport of choice, like when they're in their downtime. So we know there is a correlation between paddle and F1 people, I suppose. But number two, absolutely putting in like a pop-up court somewhere around the F1 circuit. Yeah, what a great idea. Get really well marketed. It'll get a lot of attention on, I'm sure, social media and stuff. And drivers and F1 mechanics, engineers, they all love it. So I'm really up for it. Maybe we need to speak to the guys at P1 and get something moving.
And by the way, when you're at P1, we better hear about it. we got to play with you, man.
100%. Well, I will let you. You'll be the first people to know. We need to get on court, but maybe I need to come. Yeah, well, we'll see. But maybe it's around the F1.
There you go. I got two last things for you, Ben. One is I just want to kind of ask both of you, like, do you think that this growth of paddle right now, is it just an unnatural spike in hype, and then do you think it'll just die down and settle? Or do you think it's going to set a new baseline for the sport worlds in general? Like, do you think that paddle really is going to carve a place in American sports? Obviously, in the world, it's probably already done that. But I'm just talking in the U.S. where pickleball is so huge. Like I don't see pickleball ever being dethroned, at least in the near future, by any other racket sport, just because of how accessible it is and all that kind of stuff. But I also don't know if I see tennis going anywhere. So I guess that's my curiosity in the paddle bubble, so to speak.
Wow. It's still doing it across the world. I think in our paddle bubbles, we love to think it's the biggest talking point out there. It's still there's a lot of other stuff going on, right? That paddle, people don't pay attention to paddle, but it's made a massive mark. Don't get me wrong, in the last 5 years in a lot of countries, but it's still got a long way to go. We haven't reached peak paddle in the world by any means. And I think, there's other things that could happen. The Olympics, does that happen? I believe it will. And does that take it to another level? I think we've got several years to go before we're like, across the world, are we at peak paddle? US specifically. Look, I think when brands and tours and people want to get into paddle, the US is the holy grail because it is, the world's biggest sports market. It's the big ambition for so many people in any industry to crack the US. So people think it's going to make it. At the same time, the US has a really, historic and dominant sporting culture with its major leagues. We know that. Pickleball's done an amazing job, like recreationally, at like penetrating, post-pandemic, particularly just like getting across the masses in the States. Can paddle do it? Definitely. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be coming to the US. I wouldn't be putting in so much effort and time to really, thinking about the US as a market if I didn't think it could. But, it might not be a straight line. It's going to take what you don't have with paddle compared to pickle is, it costs a lot of money to build courts. Pickle, you can just put down some lines on a net and, again, super easy. Paddle is a big cost. So and it takes time with permissions and permitting and all this kind of red tape. So it's not just a quick let's build. I think the desire is there increasingly, but it still takes time to get your clubs and courts up and running. I think it can be a hugely popular sport in the US, and I think it will be. I do think it's going to take some time. I think this year and next year are particularly critical. But just given how big the country is, how big the population is, it takes a long time for awareness to get up, and that's what I'm there. My day job is to spike awareness ultimately, but it's going to take a lot of time, right? You've got South Florida and Florida, by and large, big paddle players. You've got Texas has become a real kind of heat map for the sport. California is starting to make some moves. LA with clubs, and then the Northeast. But apart from that, what am I missing? I mean, maybe in the Midwest, it's starting to come into Chicago and places. It's it's a trickle effect now, but we've got a long way to go with the sport. And yes, I think it will make it. I think it will be very big. Will it be as big as pickle? I'd love to think it surpasses pickle, not because I like playing pickleball, but I'd love to see paddle really realize its ambitions. But it's going to, the US will be the toughest market, the biggest opportunity and the toughest market for it to crack worldwide, given everything else that happens in the States.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, Sarah, because you've been in Bali, pickle is not really a thing there, right? It's all paddle.
No, I haven't been all over Bali, and even in Spain, in Europe in general. I'll just say in Spain, Italy, because I've been there. I don't really see pickleball courts like as often that I would see it when I drive around here in the United States. So I think also Ben made a lot of great points right there. I just want to add that he said he already mentioned it, the cost. And other than the cost, pickleball, I think a part of it, that's why it grew faster too, especially in the Philippines right now. Pickleball right now is very big in the Philippines. And I think also you just need a smaller space to build one court. With paddle, there's a certain very specific, very strict rules on the dimensions of the court. And if you want to have the play of like where you're able to go out of the court, then you have that. Then you have that safe space that you need to build. But overall, like I've talked to a lot of investors as well, the part investors of different clubs. One of the biggest thing that they've shared to me as one of their biggest struggles is the permit. There's a lot to it. Like they said, the money is there, we're ready, but it's the permit, it's all the paperwork that they need to do that's pushing them back. So there's actually 2 clubs that's planning to come here in Vegas. I've talked to one of that owners. They said, hey, it's hard. Like, I wish we could get the papers right away and we'll bid right away or like tomorrow. So there's that. And also, going back to your question, I think one of the questions was if it's gonna die down, if it's like it's gonna reach peak and die down. I think because of the supply, I don't think we're gonna reach a saturation and die down, because I feel like because it's hard to build one, it's the challenge, money. Then I don't think we're gonna reach the saturations where we're like pickleball right now. Pickleball 5 minutes away. There's pickleball court 3 minutes away. They've reached saturation, and I don't think that's gonna happen in paddle, because I think, and with that not happening, I don't think like any other sport's gonna just die down easy. Like I feel like Ben said, it's a straight line, but I don't see paddle ever going stagnant in growth.
It's a really good point. So Sweden, which I'm sure you're both familiar with, in Sweden there's a real boom and bust with paddle, kind of in terms of it's the case study for what went wrong in terms of they built too quickly. And sorry, yeah, correct me if you don't know this, but yeah, essentially very kind of liberal planning laws in Sweden. They don't have the strict planning that they do in the US or UK and other places. So they built paddle very hard, very fast around the pandemic time, or just before the pandemic, I guess. And then it was one of those sports that was advertised as socially distanced. You can play it in Sweden during the pandemic years. So everyone was playing, and they built these big warehouses, like, 20, 21, 22 courts, crazy big warehouses in Sweden. And then, of course, after the pandemic, people go back to work. They have normal habits, working habits again. And there's no one Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 to fill these courts. Look, I've only been to Sweden once, and I saw one of these, well, a few of these warehouses. So I got a snapshot, but empty, like completely empty when I saw them. And that was just my example, but I'd heard all of the conversations around this, and I've seen the statistics. It's dropped off massively. So many of these businesses closed. They built massive warehouses for like small populations of people, which they kind of masked over the cracks during COVID. They looked busy, and then suddenly they realized they didn't have the populations to fill them. So Sweden, it will find its level, and I think it is, but it's had a lot of closures. And that's been a really good example for England, because here we have very strict, we call it planning permissions, planning permitting, the same as the US. And that's almost been there's so much red tape and bureaucracy here with planning that it's been the barrier to avoid oversupply quickly. Because the desire and the money of investing in courts is definitely there. The appetite for courts is there in this country, but people have been prevented from building too fast because of the planning. So whilst that's really annoying to entrepreneurs who are in a rush to build businesses quickly, it's actually a good thing in a way that they haven't been able to build them overnight, because we might have seen a Sweden repeat. Yeah. So same in the US. I think it will build at a rate that's healthy. And I think if anything, the supply will be ahead of the demand for a while. So that's probably a good thing, even though it's frustrating when you're a business owner and want to open the door tomorrow.
Yeah. And I would like to add badminton, pickleball, because people get resourceful. So these sports, I've seen people just set up a badminton court, draw a line, tape on a basketball court. Mm-hmm. So there's that factor to like the accessibility of just, hey, let's just put something, let's just draw a line. And pickleball too, like they could just set up a pickleball time on a basketball court and play pickle. But for paddle, we need the glass, we need the cage.
Yeah. So, I think what's really interesting, we haven't spoken about this, is kind of like the model of clubs you're going to see as well. We've talked about kind of like, the sort of the luxury or premium or elitists or the everyday facilities. But in terms of what they put into these clubs, aside from the cafes and stuff, like paddle courts, yes. But, some of these clubs are building, or some of them are actually wanting to build paddle only, but they put in pickleball courts because it's a good way of advertising to people that don't know about paddle yet. And then they come in and they play pickle and they're like, oh, what's this other sport? So it's like a strategic move, not because they maybe love pickle, but because they think they have to. And then you've got, I guess, country clubs, which have then gone on to build pickleball, and now they're building in paddle. And you've got tennis clubs doing the same, bringing in paddle, and they had pickle. So, and then in the UK, you've got paddle clubs now bringing in pickleball. So it's a really interesting sort of dynamic of what's going on and what facilities you build within the club, depending on the status of the various racket sports in the US, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in Vegas, badminton died. Like we used to have, I think, two badminton facilities?
Yeah, there's two huge warehouses before pre-COVID, badminton. It's like just it's not even a badminton court on a basketball court, because right now, because that closed down, I still have friends that would still play badminton. But what we do right now to compensate the loss is we set up a badminton court on a basketball court here in a public park here in Las Vegas. But so yeah, that's what happened for badminton here.
It's unfortunate.
We had in the UK, squash was a massive sport here, and I grew up playing it in the 90s, and there's masses of squash clubs closed. And then we had this whole boom in gym culture around the new millennium, the early 2000s, and there've been so many squash courts have closed now, which is that was interesting at that time. Yeah. And now squash is an Olympic sport. will that do anything? I don't know. Let's see. But it's just interesting to see what happens with these racket sports. But I think generally racket sports are in a great place. We've got to celebrate that. Tennis
Yeah.
is in a healthy place.
Yeah.
Squash in the US is actually in a really good place.
Mhm.
There's so much happening.
And I think Ben, like he used the right. I wrote it down too. I have notes here. It's actually the paddle in US. I'm happy. It's healthily growing. It's at a healthy pace that we're not scared of a saturation anytime soon. Or yeah, and it'll be interesting to see also Bali right now. I'm not sure if you guys have heard. Um, construction of paddle clubs is left and right. It's like more than 50 clubs in a very small city. So it'll be interesting to see what the next few years would bring for the paddle industry in Bali alone.
For sure.
Whichever has a compression boot, I'm there. That's where I'm going. All right. Well, I have now. It's my favorite time of the podcast. It's the last segment. It is the Racquet Rant or Rave. This is so bad. I don't know if you're familiar with the podcast format, but this is just kind of where we either rant about something paddle related or rave about something paddle related. So I'm gonna go first because.
Sorry, can I add something for a future just before we start the rant and rave?
Yeah, of course.
I think I'll be the first one to break the ice for everybody. So today I actually got the chance to first test run. I'm actually actively working with Padel VR. We're in Barcelona. So that before this morning we tested their Padel VR. It's not a game. It's how do I say it? So I'm just gonna describe what happened. So it actually so I joined the game, and then it in the game it scans my height and my arm length, and then in the game and then after that it creates an avatar for you, and then we created a game room where the coach from another place can join me, can train with me. And so I actually tested, we had a test run with the Padel VR founder. So he became my coach. And so we were one game room, me and him. I can see him on an avatar and he can see me with it through an avatar. And I can hear him live stream. Like the headset became our form of communication. So he can talk, he can give me a live or real-time feedback. Hey, Sarah. And through the avatar, I don't know, it's a very amazing technology. They're able to detect that I'm not moving my shoulder. They're able to detect that, hey, you're swinging your non-dominant hand so bad. How about you swing it just this way? Like, hey, Sarah, why is your non-dominant hand not moving? I was like, oh, yeah, it wasn't. Or like I'm swinging it like I'm flying. It was like, hey, I think you can control the ball better if you do this. And I'm just watching his avatar while he's talking to me through the headset. And he's able to give me, and then when I started doing all the feedback that he was giving me, it was like, oh my God, this is going to change the future of paddle coaching or training as well, because then you can get to work with a coach that you trust that doesn't live in the same place as you. Or you can train in your own home without going to the padel. Yeah, I'm mind blown. I may have not explained it good, but the experience, I'm very excited for the overall growth of paddle.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then the racket, they gave me a haptic racket. It allows you, it forces you to move or hit the ball in a force that you'd usually use to hit a normal ball. Like you can feel the vibration, everything. So you're just not swinging a racket like a Wii. You can feel that you have to put energy, you have to put force. So
wow, very cool.
But do they have a setting where I can make it so it feels like my Adidas Metal Bomb? Maybe make that suggestion for him. No, but that's really cool. I think that's going to be a game changer, especially for paddle. And I mean, shit, if they could ever even get that into like the tennis world, I don't know if they already have that, Ben, but
I am not aware if they do, but no, I was going to say, like, ranting or raving, I'm going to kind of rave about innovation in paddle because yeah, I'm a big. Shall I take the mic now or?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, no, I just to Sarah's point, yeah, I love what I'm seeing in paddle. I think people are very energized. Anyone working or surrounded by the sport is like, feeling quite entrepreneurial because it's exciting. We've got this shiny new toy to work with, and people are, thinking of some great techs. I love what I'm seeing with tech companies. I like hands up. I work with Playtomic, so I would say this, but I love this open matches thing. It's really transformed the sport of paddle. Bringing people together, connecting them on the court through their algorithm, yes, but the more important thing of what it's done off the court is these people have become friends or romantic partners or business partners. They have literally, paddle has created that for them, and it's a tech provider, by and large, Playtomic, that has helped facilitate that. So there's one example. There's these great people called like No Strings coming along, creating something in the US who are so if you've ever been to one of these like entertainment venues, they're called like Bounce or Flight Club or Punch Jack. Yeah, they're massive. They've been massive successes. Like there's this paddle version that's going to be coming. I think their first club's going to be in Coral Gables, I believe. But the guys behind Bounce, are bringing this like paddle version. So, kind of where you have this dynamic scoring and it's, points for prizes and wages and stuff like that. So gamifying paddle. And that doesn't take away from the serious, competitive and tournament structure. The people that just want to play more conventional. But I love the fact people are coming in and doing these kind of things. There's a place for this because there will be people who want to go and, have their burgers and fries and do it in that entertainment way and kind of, be kind of like using kind of, tech and scoring and like, VAR in Premier League football, using kind of this technology to check line calls and stuff. So just being a bit kind of innovative and kind of lateral in terms of like how they experience paddle. So there's them, and there's other tech companies doing great things. Whether it's kind of the AI side or whether it's the chip, kind of, for want of a better word, chip you put at the bottom of the camp, the racket that then helps pick up on your technique and all your data. And I love, I think there's people doing some really interesting things because it's a new sport and they think they can do it differently. And look, you could do this with tennis and sports that have been around longer, but people are using paddle as a kind of like a laboratory to do different stuff. So I'm a big fan of all of this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know if you guys have played in these courts before, but when I went to Conquer, they had this thing. You scan the QR code, and you basically can get a recording of your match, the full match on different angles, and it'll say stuff like, "Oh, like here's how many of your overheads you hit," or something. Like it actually provided you real time stats, and I'm like, that's insane. Like I had no idea
Really
that
cool.
stuff existed. It's there's a lot of innovation happening in paddle for sure.
It's super cool. You can I don't know if it's the play site, one of these companies, but you can basically you get your highlights, right? And you get your you can live stream matches, so it can be good for tournaments if you want to live stream as a venue. Can be good for like chewing over the your technique with your coach. Or it's like you use it for like bite size and putting it on Instagram and bragging with your friends, and so this whole video content stuff is huge. People are consuming this in a big way. So it's it's part of the experience, right?
Yeah, it is. I love that. But yeah, a lot of cool things happening for sure in paddle. Sarah, do you have anything you want to rant or rave about?
Rave. It's just amazing how the paddles for me started as a game and then became my lifestyle and my identity in sport.
Love that.
Okay, I'm gonna rant, okay, because I had an experience this morning where we were playing a match, and I was very adamant because there's the bull paddle balls that they play in the international leagues or whatever, and then there's the shoots balls that the club provides for us, and they're a little bit better for higher altitudes, kind of like Vegas. So Ben, in our where we're at, we've been kind of described as like the ball plays too fast. Not too fast, but it's much faster than a lot of places. So you kind of do need like those I guess higher altitude balls, are kind of balls that mimic that. But then when you throw in a normal bull paddle that has like the normal speed, I mean, it's just flying off your racket, right?
Yeah.
But so I kept saying, hey, like let's just play with these balls because these are vastly different from the shoots. Or if you guys want to play with shoots, let's see what it's like. it doesn't really matter. We're not really at that level. And I'm like, Garth, like it does matter because if you're mixing the balls, like I hate when we mix the balls.
Yeah,
It changes the flow of the game. Then it's like you don't know how to hit it, and then it's like whoever's serving. I mean, at that point, it's gonna be Russian roulette on whether or not you're gonna be able to like drive this ball down the line when you're returning it, or if you
yeah.
just do a safe short lob. And on a day like today, like what Sarah was saying, it was windy. It was just extra annoying, and I didn't even eat coffee to be riled up. I woke up
And
this
now they're
morning.
comfy.
Yeah. But anyways, Ben, Sarah, like thank you guys so much for your time. Like I thought this was a
Oh,
nice conversation. I had a blast. I learned so much from you, Ben. Seriously, I think we both did. We really
Yes.
value your time, and we're
thank
really
you.
excited for you to, come out to Vegas sometime and just
Absolutely.
hit some
I
balls
will.
with us.
100%. Well, I'm really grateful for having me on. Thank you for spending the time. And I'm really pumped to obviously be in the US and come and see you guys and see what's going on in Vegas. And yeah, let's catch up, I guess, on the
Yeah,
ground.
Right
that'll
on.
be amazing.
And for
Right
the
on.
for the viewers and listeners, where can they follow you, Ben? What like your website, your Instagram, things like that.
Sure. So yeah, my main company, Paddle22 and paddle22.com. And also follow me on LinkedIn and then Instagram, I'm the Paddle PR and then Anglo-American Padel Cup.
Wow.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And for the listeners, I will see you guys on next week's podcast.